When we're young, we have an amazing, positive outlook about how great life is going to be, but somewhere along the line, we forget to dream and end up settling. Join Up Dots features amazing people who refuse to give up and chose to go after their dreams. This is your blueprint for greatness. So here's your host, live from the back of his garden in the UK, David Ralph.
Yes, hello there. Good morning, world. I hope you're all okay and you're rocking and a-rolling. It's episode 111 of Join Up Dots, and we have got a great chap on the show today. He is somebody that will put most of us movers and shakers, or the ones that call ourselves movers and shakers, to shame, because he has started doing his thing at quite an early age. He's just 17 years old and has packed more into his last few years than most of us manage in a lifetime. An entrepreneur, investor, author, go-getter, speaker, money lender, lover of riding dirt bikes and writing music, he really has the drive to make things occur, and on his own terms too. As he says in his own words, I learned early that you don't get what you don't ask for. When I was 13, I asked my parents if I could put my income from appearing in a TV commercial to better use by partnering with them on a real estate project, and they said yes. Then when I was 14 and working on my first book, I asked Donald Trump if he'd answer some questions about entrepreneurship, and he said yes too. Like anyone else, I've heard my share of no's. No is a part of life and certainly a part of business, but I try not to take rejection personally. Hearing a no motivates me to try harder next time. So is it that simple, or is there so much more to becoming a success and a millionaire by such an early age? Well, we're going to find out as our guest planned to be one before leaving college. Big dreams indeed. It's a delight to bring onto the show to start joining up the dots of his life for one and only Houston Gunn. How are you, Houston?
Good. How about you?
I am rocking and a-rolling, sir. Obviously, we'll share it with the audience because that's what we do. We've just had big internet problems, and all the time I've been wanting to say, Houston, we have a problem. I bet you get that all the time, though, do you?
Absolutely. Hasn't been a day in 1 year that I haven't heard it.
And do you laugh every time, or do you just kind of go, ah?
Absolutely. I just go along with it because it just kind of, I don't know. I guess it's just something that I've become known for amongst my group of friends. So
it's one of those things you're never going to get away from, sir. And you're never going to get away from also being a person that people are interested in, because you are, as I say, 17 years old. In the introduction, you started your entrepreneurship at an age when most people are just riding around on their bikes and playing football and sort of messing around. What was it about you that got you going? And I suppose the bigger question is, are people interested in you because of what you've achieved or because of your age?
Well, I would say, going to what I've done in my age, I would say it would have to be a bit of both, because many people, if I would have been even in my mid-20s, have done real estate, etc., and a bunch of different entrepreneurial things. But I would say since I've been 16 and now 17 doing these things, it really kind of catches people's attention. So I would say it'd have to be a bit of both that really catches people's attention. And I'd say I really got started and exposed to this whole world of entrepreneurship just from my parents and my grandma Linda, who just exposed me, because I come from a whole family of entrepreneurs. My parents were entrepreneurs and my grandma was an entrepreneur. Even going up to my great-grandparents were entrepreneurs. So I've just really been exposed and observing what they do and really just learning from it.
So was there a key moment? Was there a key phrase or a bit of advice that you got when you thought, yeah, okay, I know what you're saying, this is my path?
Well, a big quote that definitely influenced my direction and my path of life came from my grandma Linda, and I share this in my first book. And she told me, when you work for others, you make them rich. And when you work for yourself, you make yourself rich. And at the time, I somewhat understood it, but it didn't really click until I was a little bit older, attending these real estate seminars and business conferences and observing what entrepreneurship really is and doing it for myself.
But it's such an obvious truth that it makes you wonder why so many of us don't grasp the fact that, yeah, if you're working for somebody, more often than not, they won't pay you for the extra effort you put in. It's just a job, and you're lucky to have a job. And that is the kind of mentality with so many people. It's a job, and, many people haven't got a job nowadays, so just put up with it. But you're never going to get rich, as you say. You're never going to get rich. And if becoming rich means providing more comfort and more support and a better standard of life for you, then it's got to be something that we're all aiming for, I would have thought.
Absolutely, and going to have a job rather than being an entrepreneur. And one thing I've really observed and that I try to really bring out in my first book is, through everything that I've observed in my 3 years going through high school so far, is it really isn't about entrepreneurship. It's about getting good grades, going to college, and getting a job, which is great, but it might not be for everyone. Maybe somebody else wants to take a different path or has a passion for something, or maybe just knows he wants to be an entrepreneur but doesn't know where to start or what to do. And I would say, from everything that I've observed, entrepreneurship isn't really a promoted path.
I was speaking to somebody the other day. Well, I speak to so many of these guys, and on a daily basis, the amount of entrepreneurs and successful people kind of say, and I don't want anyone out there listening thinking, right, I'm just going to quit school and not follow through, because it's a good thing to do, and get an education and qualification is
Absolutely.
a good thing to do. So that's not the point I'm going to be making. But the point is, so many people say that the process of going through school just to come out the other end with a qualification, basically, instead of inspiring, it takes it the other way, and it becomes a factory just pushing the kids through until they come out the other end with no clearer destination than when they started. You're in school at the moment. Do you see that all around you? Do you see people just going through the motions because they know they've got another year and another 2 years until they can graduate?
Absolutely. And one thing I've really observed is, I've done all the business and marketing classes. And one thing I really kind of see that is kind of a problem is, they just open up a textbook and they say, okay, what's the definition of a target market, or your demographic? Just what's the definition? So it's really all about definitions instead of going out there and doing it. And I would say that's really one of the best ways to learn, and also learn from your mistakes, because you might also make a mistake, is just going out there and doing it.
So it should be more focused on life skills more than sort of education?
Absolutely, and more of a take action education.
Do you know a chap, I think he's vaguely well known in America, a chef called Jamie Oliver?
The name rings a bell. I can't pinpoint it, though, at the moment.
He's an English guy, and I know that he's done some programs in America and stuff. And he did a thing over here where he says, when he was going through school, and now he's a millionaire chef, and when he was going through school, the last thing he really wanted to do was be at school. He just wanted to be earning money and hustling and getting on with it. And he would see so many kids that were prime for a great life, a motivational life, an inspirational life, I suppose, but they lost their way just because their motivation on a daily basis, with teachers and professors and other students just saying you're not going to amount to anything, just whittled them down until they started believing in it and playing up to the fact. So they started being disruptive in the class and not paying attention. So he took these kids who had been expelled from schools or were just lost causes in the education system and put them in a school that he created. And it was just for a TV program, but he took world famous experts and doctors and professors to run the biology classes, and world class artists to run the sort of the art schools, to see, by actually having people whose whole passion was doing these subjects, whether they could motivate the kids to actually be inspired to do it. And what it turns out really is that there's very few teachers out there that are truly inspirational and can get the lost generation to focus in on their qualifications and their education. To the teachers, it's a job. But then there's one or two teachers that we all remember when we were going through school, and we go, oh, they were amazing. And when we think about it, it was because those ones were the ones that were teaching us more about finding ourselves than actually what was in the textbook. Do you find those kind of teachers?
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking about how people maybe not be be as inspiring. And a story that I had actually my first day of freshman in high school when we had a welcome to high school assembly in the gym, believe it or not, the leadership teacher actually went on to announce that if you get good grades, go on to college, and get a degree and get a job, on average, you will earn $1 million in your lifetime. And everyone was going wild, teachers, staff, students. And I actually was starting to think, and I actually did the math, that if you work for 50 years of your life, let's say from age 22 to 72, only to earn $1 million in your lifetime, that would only be $20,000 a year, not including any taxes or expenses. So that kind of really almost ticked me off that they were putting this message that you can go work for your whole life just to make $1 million. And that's really kind of when I started to set the goal of how I plan to graduate from high school millionaire, because I don't want to be a millionaire by the time I'm done working for my whole life. And I would encourage everyone listening and viewing that you should set goals, because no one should be worth $1 million in their lifetime. You should be worth more.
And when he said that, did you kind of look around at people and go, why the hell are you clapping here? Why are you cheering? Did you feel that passionately? Were you the only one in the room with your arms folded with a kind of quizzical look on your face?
Absolutely. Once I really did the math, I was just kind of shocked, but I was really kind of just almost stunned that people are just cheering for this. I guess it's just when you hear the word $1 million, people just go wild. But when you really think about it, $1 million ain't that much anymore. And one thing of how that really inspires me and how I really take different positive but also somewhat negative events to help motivate me and I guess inspire me is you take whatever is the negative, for example, the $1 million statement from the leadership teacher, and then you just use it as fuel to help promote your message and just get your word out there and just take action to go out there and do what you want to do.
I agree with that totally, Houston, but I imagine so many people out there listening to this, wanting to create a kick-ass life for themselves, are trapped in that it's easier to believe the negative stuff than the good stuff.
Well, you just kind of really got to sort out and really go with your own beliefs of what you really think is positive and negative, and then also just think about it and maybe just follow your passion, because do whatever you're passionate about, because whether it is being an entrepreneur or maybe going to college and getting a job, because that's great, because that's what you're passionate about. And what's that saying, like, if you're passionate about what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. So it's really all about, at the end of the day, just finding your passion and doing what you want to do.
It's very aware, though, isn't it, for a 17-year-old? And I mean that with the greatest respect. You know, you don't seem like a 17-year-old. I've got kids, and I have 17-year-olds come into my house, and I say to them, all right, lads, and I go, ugh, and I can barely say 2 words. And I think to myself, you know, they're just kind of dripping around. But you're somebody who is, you know, just the fact that you are relating to people like me, for example, Dave Ramsey, Donald Trump, and I'm not putting myself in their category by any stretch of the imagination, but the fact that you're putting yourself in these positions where I would find that stressful, going in to sort of interview Donald Trump, and you did it at the age of 14. Is it just because when you're that young you don't know any better, or is it the fact that you've got some kind of superpower that the rest of us haven't got?
Well, I would say when I was reaching out for the interview for Donald Trump, well, actually, believe it or not, I sent out over 100 of requests for different interviews from all the successful and famous entrepreneurs. And I believe I also sent out requests to athletes because the Summer Olympics were going on at that time. And believe it or not, out of the 100 of requests that I sent out, Donald Trump was my first and only response. And that's going back to what you said in the intro about how I really learned that I don't really take no personally, but I know I'm going to get no more than I'm going to get yes. So I just took the chance and took the risk of asking all these people. But I also said what I was doing and positioned myself by saying, hi, I'm this 14-year-old who's writing this book about entrepreneurship and how I did real estate, etc. And I leveraged what I've done with my age to really, I guess, help position myself to create a better odd of me getting a yes.
I've spoken to a few guys now who are teenage entrepreneurs, and they're doing great guns. And to be honest, the first one that came into my life on this show was a little bit of a fluke, but we really connected, and it was a fantastic program. He's a gentleman called Henry Miller, and he's created Henry's Humdingers, which is like a spicy honey product that he sells across America. And he was on the Shark Tank program, and he got investment from the sharks. And one of my colleagues said, you need to get more teenage entrepreneurs, because what you're doing, you're focusing in on the older avatar for the show, the people that I call is the lost generation. They're the ones who are already in jobs, already have got that inbuilt negative approach to this is where I am, I've got to put up with it. And what we need to do is focus in at the beginning of the curve to the guys who are just coming out of school or college, or still in school and college, to say to them, this is a great world that we're on. This is an amazing place. And you look at Houston Gunn, what he's doing. You look at what Henry Miller's doing. Why can't you do that? You know, what have they got that you haven't got? And you're already answering those questions. You're giving a blueprint to success here, Houston. The fact that you send out 100 letters and almost expect none of them to come back. But then when you do, I would argue, and I don't know what the other names were that you sent, but I argue that you probably got one of the big boys to actually respond. And is that odds game, isn't it? It's that law of averages. You're playing the numbers game and putting yourself in a position for success where most people would do 1, 2, 3, oh, it's not working, and give up. Is that a key message to everyone in life, that you've got to try it more than you've ever done before?
Because whenever you're trying to do something, you're definitely going to be told no more than yes, and you don't want to give up even if you get a certain amount of no's in a row. Just keep going at it, because eventually you're more than likely bound to get a yes. And it's just the more you ask, the higher you raise your chance that you'll get a yes. And really, one of my sayings is, with the whole always ask, is it's better to be told no than not knowing at all.
Yeah, you certainly are preaching to the converted here. Everything you're saying is hitting me big time. And it's wrong that I'm at my age and I'm going, yes, I agree with this totally. But I just couldn't see this for like 15, 20 years. I was just on the corporate gig. I was an employer. I was somebody that was doing a path that I thought was the right path. But now I look at it and I think it was somebody else's path. So everything that you're saying is an absolute blueprint, and I hope the listeners are out there jotting these down, because you only need 3 or 4 of these statements on a bit of paper and look at them every single day, and you've got a head start on, I don't know, probably 90% of the planet, I would have thought.
And with all these tips, I guess, how you call them, blueprints that I'm giving out, really is, it's really all stuff that I learned and I really applied, and or what I've observed from doing, and it really just is starting to click with me the more I do it. So even if it might not work the very first time, just keep taking action and keep doing it, and make sure if you fail, because failure is always a possibility, but make sure you learn what you can from that failure to make it a positive outcome by learning from it and being able to do better the next time.
Right, let's start taking you back and start joining up the dots of your life, because it seems to be, certainly in the introduction, the starting point was you appearing in a TV commercial and getting paid, and then saying to your mum and dad, I want to buy into a real estate project. Now, was that something that you just had a thought in your head, let's do this, or was there a time actually leading up to that that commercial that you were starting to think, if I had some cash, I know what I would do with it? How did that work?
Well, it wasn't leading up to the commercial, but it was in between the commercial and my first real estate deal, where I started to attend real estate seminars where my parents would be taking me to them. And then my parents got more heavily into the whole real estate world. And my whole family's done real estate. My dad was a contractor. My mom's done real estate investing, and my grandma was a real estate developer. So I've seen all of them do it. And going back to one of the things you were saying earlier, I just really asked myself, why not me? If they can do it, why can't I? So then I just really asked and told them I'd like to do real estate with my money, and could I do a real estate deal with you? And believe it or not, when I first asked, I asked them if I could lend them money to do a real estate deal, but they didn't want me to lend them money. So they said I could become a partner on their property. So I just decided, heck, it's an opportunity, and with that opportunity, with all the numbers out, I'd make a better return on my investment than having them sit in CDs, which I have been doing before that. And one thing I like to say is the only CDs I like now are the ones with music on them, even though CDs with music are going away now with all the digital era. But I really just asked myself, why not me? If they can do it, why can't I?
And did they laugh at you when you first said it, or did they just embrace that question straight away?
They just really embraced it straight away, because my whole family's really got started early. And believe it or not, my mom opened her first business, which was a dance studio, at the age of 17 while she was still in high school. And when she graduated, she had a full business with customers and clients at the moment she graduated. So she just took that and ran with it. And so one thing I also like to say is I beat her out, as she opened her first business at 17 and I did mine at 16.
Go Houston, go Houston.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just think that with the online opportunities that we've got, where you don't actually have to go into brick and mortar and set up like a dance studio like your mum did and actually pay rent and all those kind of things, kids, and certainly my kids, I'm going to drive this into them. They've got the opportunity to just connect across the world through the internet and build businesses, on a nickel and a dime, basically. So there's very limited risk other than finding something to channel your passion in and spending time and time doing it. But you could come out of college or university or just school with already a realised business supporting you. And how good can that be in life?
Yeah, and I'd say that's one thing, is a lot of people underestimate just what they can do, especially having all this online and digital technology now. It is so much easier to distribute what you're doing. Even let's say you are a musician and maybe you have a CD. I mean, you have all these iTunes and Twitter, you can just post links, and there are so many ways you can just market at little to no cost and just promote whatever you want to do and what you are doing. And even if you need funding nowadays with the whole digital world, you don't need to go necessarily walking around and networking, giving business cards to find funding with all these now Kickstarter websites and programs. It's so much easier to get access to capital, and it's just so much easier to connect to a more wider audience.
There's kind of limited risk. Of course there is risk, but to my way of thinking now, it's more risk in time and effort. I'm doing this show. It's going absolute great guns. I can't believe how well it's doing across the world. But actually, when I look at the cost it's taken to do it, probably the most expensive is my microphone. And that's it. And that microphone could last me 5 or 6 years before it gives up the ghost. You can create a business on really a shoestring, but you still have a risk, but it's a very small risk compared to brick and mortar, I would have thought.
You just got to find out and make sure you do whatever you have to do to get it set up correctly, and just do what you can do to help mitigate the risk to as low as you can get it.
I'm going to play a little speech about risk, and this is something that Jim Carrey said recently, and I like playing this. It's one of my favourite little motivational speeches. But I want to play it and just see your feelings on this. So this is Jim Carrey, and he said this recently.
My father could have been a great comedian, but he didn't believe that was possible for him. And so he made a conservative choice. Instead, he got a safe job as an accountant. And when I was 12 years old, he was let go from that safe job. And our family had to do whatever we could to survive. I learned many great lessons from my father, not the least of which was that you can fail at what you don't want. So you might as well take a chance on doing what you love.
Should we be taught that at school, Houston?
That should be played in every school, just because that's a really different way of thinking about it, and it really helps open up and really think about it. And I like the whole part is you can fail at something you don't love, so you might as well do what you love. And that is just really a great thing, and it really goes back to just finding your passion. I haven't heard that, but I wish I would have heard it before then, because that was really great and really powerful.
It is. It's astonishingly powerful, and once again, it's astonishingly simple. It's not rocket science, any of this. Any of the conversations, you can listen back to over 100 of the conversations that we're having, and pretty much everyone says, A, you've got to take a leap of faith, so you've got to sort of challenge a few risks. B, you've got to put more effort in than you've ever done before. C, you've got to find a passion, because when the effort starts getting too much, you need something to follow through. You've got to find the failures as quickly as possible so that you can overcome them to get the successes. And I suppose the last thing is, if you can make sure that you don't see them as failures, they're just stepping stones to your success, you've really got a head start on everyone else. Would you agree with that?
Because at the end of the day, it really goes back to finding your passion and a way to make money at it.
How do people find their passion, Houston, when... And I'm going to ask your question, ask your sort of point of view on this, but then I'm going to sort of tell you what I think has occurred over the last few 50, 60, 70 shows. But how do people, in your point of view, find their passion?
So I would say finding your passion really just goes into what you can see yourself doing and something you enjoy doing, where you can spend several hours a day working on it. And just maybe it's something you already do, but you might not do it to make money, and just find a way where you can do whatever it is, whether it be a product or a service, and go find a way to make money at it. And there's just so many different avenues you can go, and you just really got to first start out doing research and finding what you can do, especially how we were talking about earlier with all the technology and the internet and everything online. Is there's so many different avenues. So just really find something that you would have a drive for, and something you could see yourself wanting to do for several hours a day to work on, and really that's your passion.
I'm going to spin that on its head, and this is what's been coming out of the conversations, that the tagline of the show is connecting our past to build our future. And I now am a total advocate that we have clues in all our lives to help us find that passion. And it isn't even finding the passion, we already know it. Because it seems to me, if you look back to our younger self, when we had no opportunity of earning money or very little money, we were doing lots of things because we just loved doing them. We would come home from school and we would just do stuff because that's what we loved doing. And now, if you look back on those and you start jotting down all the things, so if you like the fact that, you would go around mowing people's lawns and washing people's cars to make money, then there's highly likely you're going to be an entrepreneur. If you're somebody that likes to get loads of people together and make clubs and gangs in your sort of shed in the bottom of your garden, you might be a networker. And there seems to be a direct correlation between our younger self and what the people now are doing who are successful. Literally, to a man and a woman, they're all saying to me, yeah, I did. I liked doing that when I was a kid. I used to like taking machinery apart and doing things like that, and then building them up. And now they like building businesses or building websites and all that kind of stuff. They already know their passion because it was what they were doing when they were children and they weren't being paid for it. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. And how you mentioned car wash, and one thing I really see is because you don't have to be an adult to wash cars. And really, even if it might not be the thing you're full passionate, but let's say you like working outside and you like maybe cars and everything, maybe start out, if you're in high school or something, washing cars, because if you can start washing a bunch of cars, and then you can start paying for gas in your car and start paying for the stuff that you want to do, instead of having to go put and get a part-time job at, let's say, a fast food restaurant or a grocery store where you're just making minimum wage and getting paid for the time you work. You could go wash cars and then do something that you have somewhat of a passion for and make money to put gas in your car while you're in high school and do the different activities that you want to do.
When I was a child, I used to do a paper round every single day, and you don't see many children nowadays going around delivering papers. And I used to wash cars, and I used to wait until the really most miserable, horrible, wintry day when it was freezing cold, because you literally knocked on any door and people would go, yeah, I don't fancy doing it, and there's your money. So if you find that sort of avenue where people haven't got that enthusiasm, but you have, you can make big bucks. So did you do any kind of small-style entrepreneur when you was a child? Was you a hustler?
Well, I'll share this story and how it goes back to how I said my mom had a dance studio. And one time, I would say I was about 7 years old, I decided to approach her and I asked if I could sell different merchandise, and concessions came later, but I started out selling merchandise, where I asked if I could sell merchandise, and after everything was paid off, could I keep the profit? And my mom really took this as a learning experience for me so she accepted and said, yes, I could sell. So I went around selling different glow in the dark necklaces and all those different novelty items during the dance recitals, and walking around through the theater selling it, doing the math, counting back change and everything with a blue fanny pack with change strapped on. And my mom really took this as a learning experience for me, where it really taught me that it's all based about how hard I work, and that's how I'll get rewarded. And the more harder that I work, the more I will potentially make.
And it's as simple as that. It's finding a market and putting the work in.
Absolutely.
So when you were sitting with Donald Trump, because I'm fascinated with him, did you was he like a caring old uncle? Did he give you a different Donald Trump to what we see on the television?
I would say when I met him, he was probably one of the most nicest and most personal people I've ever met.
And what other sort of big cheeses have you met that you can compare?
Well, so far, I also got to meet, how you mentioned, I met Dave Ramsey being here in Nashville, Tennessee, and because he's in this area as well. So I did meet him, and anyone who doesn't know who he is, he's a financial guru, and he was really nice as well, and it was great to meet him. We also traded books, and I would say those are the two so far that I've met, but there's plenty more on my list, and the next one that I'm planning on trying to reach out to meet is actually ABC Shark Tank Barbara Cochran, as she endorsed my second book, Shooting for Success, as my first book got endorsed by Donald Trump, that's Schooled for Success.
Have you spoken to TJ Howe, who runs the Shark Tank podcast?
No, I've not.
I'll put you in contact with him after the show, and I'll see if he can do anything in that regard. I don't know if he's got any sort of direct contact with the Shark Tank, but he certainly runs this successful podcast based on the stories and the backstories of the show. It might be useful for you to see if you can work your magic in that direction.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
No, we'll do that. That's what it's all about, Houston. It's about networking. So when you were meeting Donald Trump and when you were meeting Dave Ramsey and these successful people, and I noticed you didn't say that you'd met me, Houston, but I'll let that go. I'll just let that go. Were you thinking to yourself, yes, I can see exactly what has made these people where they are? Or was it kind of, I don't really get what this person has done that's different to everybody else, but boy, they've done it?
I would say what I've really observed is not even with the big, successful, famous entrepreneurs of Donald Trump, Dave Ramsey, but even just more of the average successful entrepreneur like my grandma, I've really seen is they put in the time, and if something has to get done, they get it done, whether it be 6 in the morning or 11 at night. They do what it takes to get it done when it needs to be done, and they just really take the action and put in the time, and just really goes back to just the taking action part. And I'd say that's the biggest thing, is if they see the opportunity, they take action.
And is it easy for them to do that because now they are successful, they can outsource, they can, put money in it that they've got spare, where at the very beginning you're doing everything yourself?
Absolutely. And I'd say also one of the biggest things that I've also seen, and I've really started to really take in impact and start thinking, obviously I'm not to that point yet in my life, but one of the biggest things is once they really make the success that they have, they make the money, they make everything, then it really goes back to giving back, whether it be to charity or to the community. And that's one really great thing that I think is a great thing to do with the success that you have, is you make the money. Obviously you have to have some for yourself, but then you just give back to help the community or help a charity.
There's a way of thinking that the more you give back, the more you get. So you buy into that.
Absolutely.
And what kind of charities and stuff would you be interested? I know it's sort of early days because you're still striving to get to that point. And I've got no doubt in talking to you that you're going to get to that point. And we're going to trail in your wake. But are there sort of communities and charities that you're interested in at the moment?
Well, at this moment, I haven't necessarily done all the research on different charities, but I've also been thinking and considering the options of eventually maybe starting my own nonprofit.
Go for you, Houston. Yeah, I think that's great stuff. So
Thank you.
You're looking big plan all the way through. So let's just sort of jump back, because your story is one that I'm fascinated about you now, but I'm also fascinated with how you got there. So you did that real estate project with your mum and dad, and they said yes, and you put your money into that. And then you started, it seems to me, almost sort of a year later or within 6 months, writing your first book. What did you have that was enough to write a book on?
Well, it was really... Well, I'll start about how I came up with the idea of writing a book. And actually, I was on a school assignment called the Job Shadow Project, still during my freshman year, where we had to go shadow somebody in a field of work that interests you. So I actually job shadowed a CEO of a private money lending company who's been a mentor to me and my family in the real estate world. And I originally asked my mom if she could ask him if I could job shadow him, but then she flipped around and said, no, you're going to ask him. And she really just put me in the situation of me starting to learn to ask for what I want. So I reached out and simply asked if I could job shadow him for the day, and he said yes. So during the interview that I had to conduct for the project, he actually flipped one of the questions around on me and basically challenged me to write a book. And if anyone wants to hear that interview, it is shared in my first book, Schooled for Success, How I Plan to Graduate from High School Millionaire, that you can also get on HoustonGunn.com.
And so what did he see in you, though? Because the fact that you are shadowing him, I would imagine, although he said yes, there must have been a bit of him that thought, I've got a lot to do anyway, and now I've got this kid sort of hanging around for the day. I'll give him my time, I'll give him my enthusiasm, but really I could sort of do without it. But he wasn't that kind of personality. He was somebody that actually saw something in you and then thought, I can challenge you even at this stage to do something bigger.
And as I mentioned, there was also the previous connection as we went to his seminars and business and real estate seminars, and he was also a mentor, where he really was one of the people that also helped teach me a better understanding about real estate. And
when he said, write that book, you kind of gone, yeah, I'll do that. That's fine. You must have gone, no, I can't write a book. I'm only 14. What are you thinking about?
Well, I was thinking about my English class, because English is definitely my worst subject with writing and reading. And even now that I have the book out, even when I went through English 11, there would always be friends or other classmates in the classroom. They'd joke, you wrote a book, but I didn't do good on the test. And I said, that's what editors are for. And really, I just really took the challenge, and I had no idea how to write a book, but I figured I would give it my best shot.
That seems to be your thing, and it's amusing that your surname is Gunn, because you seem to give your best shot on everything.
I guess it all falls in line, so yeah.
It all falls in line, it certainly does. So you've written your book, you've done your real estate deal. When was it that you started going, right, this is what I want to do, and it wasn't that you was being kind of asked or challenged or tested? When did you start to find your feet and then start expanding on your own?
I'd have to say I really started to take action and really think differently, and I guess more question and stand up with what I believed in as my freshman year of high school kind of came to a close. And I'll share you a story which really was probably the biggest impact, and how I mentioned earlier about taking negative influence and turning it into fuel to help motivate you to do what you want to do. And this is a story that actually happened in my 9th grade honors English class, when we had to write a 1,000-word paper on a topic of our choice. And I chose the topic of first trust deed lending, as I already did a real estate deal and private money lending. So I figure I got somewhat of a grasp on it. But when I can write this 1,000-word paper, it will allow me to do more research to learn and, I guess, educate myself more on something that I'm passionate about, as well as it's 1,000 words. And I'm writing a book, so I can also then put it into the book. But believe it or not, when I had the topic was rejected by the teacher, saying you cannot fill 1,000 words on first trusted lending. And I knew I could, and I'm sure anyone else who's familiar who has done first trusted lending knows that you could more than easily fill 1,000 words on lending. Even if you just slapped a contract right in there, that's definitely more than 1,000 words. And I really started to question, I guess, argue it and stand up for why can everyone else choose their topic when it's more about just different controversial topics that you might not even learn anything from, when I want to do something that I want to learn from. And I really started to question it until I had to choose a topic after one was originally after that assigned to me of advertising towards males, which I didn't want to do. So then at the end of the day, I just had to suck it up and choose a random topic that I had no passion for, and I put it together overnight, and believe it or not, I ended up failing English by 1.5%.
That teacher should be ashamed, really.
Well, I shared that story in my book as well, and that's really, I was frustrated at it, and actually, because I just finished my junior year of high school where I did 9th grade English again, and it goes back to what I was saying about taking the negative influence and negative outcomes, but then fueling it to turn it into something positive. And that was really something that helped motivate me to writing my book. And believe me, the teacher got a signed copy when it was done.
And what did you say in it?
I would say I said about something like, "Thank you for the extra motivation to help me finish my book."
Oh, you're such a diplomat, aren't you? I would have said something much different than that.
Well, I decided for the best it would be nice to just keep it clean and, I guess, respectful.
Houston Gunn, you're a bigger man than I am. You certainly are.
Thank you.
So if you went back and you was a teacher in your school and they called you back in to run a class on sort of business class, what would be a kind of lesson that you think would be good to do to inspire kids to actually take chances?
Well, if I was teaching a business class, I would say one of the best assignments, it wouldn't be writing a paper. Paper might be involved with it, but how I was talking about how I took the different business and marketing classes, I would say if I could choose how to teach a business class, I'd say I would do it of more take action education, of maybe just assign a project where it might not necessarily be something where everyone's passionate about, but it's just a small project, but it's where you're going out there and actually doing it and learning it instead of just reading out of a textbook and reading the different definitions.
That's the only way that you're going to achieve, isn't it? By actually doing stuff, because you do stuff and you learn and you fail and you learn a bit more and then you have successes. It ties everything into what we were saying earlier. But living in the hypothetical world, we can all do that. We can all say, oh, if I had done that, this would have worked and that would have worked. But of course, that's just the comfort zone that we're staying rooted in. Oh, you're getting me worked up here, Houston. I want to come down to your school and shake up a few people. I really do. But I think it's the same in all schools.
I would say with my whole experience from schools, and that's what I try to bring, I guess, awareness in my first book, Schooled for Success, is that it's geared towards going out and getting a job, which is great. But if it doesn't talk about entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship starts to die out, you need to have entrepreneurs in order to have jobs.
I think it's fueled for just keeping control. It doesn't inspire. I remember going through classes where, I loved them because the teacher was a bit of a free spirit. Did we get all the work done? Yes, we did. Did we enjoy ourselves? Yes, we did. But I also remember other ones where the teacher was just there to tell us what was in a book. And they would just put it on the board and we would just copy it from the board into a book. You can't go 40 years at school just doing that kind of stuff. You got to realise that these kids have got one chance And it's up to us, and it's up to the parents, and it's up to the teachers, it's up to all of us to be able to light that spark in these kids to go out and not necessarily be an entrepreneur. I'm not saying that at all, but at least find a job that they can love doing and not just think life is going to be rubbish, school was rubbish, jobs are going to be rubbish, it's time to die. And it seems that we're sort of moving kids into that kind of lack of ambition, lack of dreams mode that they're just accepting because we keep on telling them that it's going to be like that.
Well, one thing occasionally I would sometimes refer to school because, like you said, there is these classes where you have these great teachers that you enjoy being at. But with some and most of the time, I guess it's more school is, I guess, quote unquote, the job that you don't like doing, but you have to do.
Yeah, that's right. And I think if I say to any kid, you know, do they like being at school? Or more better question, have you had a good day at school? When it's things like art and sort of English and things like that, or drama, they're more likely to say yes. And when it's things like maths and business lessons and stuff, they're going to say no. And at the end of the day, it's because those ones are slightly more creative, I imagine, and let the kids think for themselves more than the other ones that are just a series of rules to follow.
Absolutely.
Oh, we've started a whole new conversation here, sir. Right. Well, just before I send you back on the mic and send you back in time to have a one-on-one with your younger self, I just want to play the words of Steve Jobs. Now, I play this to all the guests on the show because it is a fascinating speech that he made. And even though you're 17 years old, I'll be fascinated to see whether you can see a relevance to your own life. So I'm going to play the words of Steve Jobs, and then we're just going to have a quick chat afterwards.
Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever, because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart even when it leads you off the well-worn path, and that will make all the difference.
Can you see, being at school, that there is faith and trust and intuition with the kids? That those words that Steve Jobs is saying to inspire them to take action, do you think it's there, or is that another speech that we should play at school?
That is absolutely a speech that should be played in all schools, and I really picked up from it the whole going forward part is you can't really have the exact path, but he referred to it as connecting the dots forward, and I kind of really see that with me because I'd always say is because I get asked the question a lot of where do I see myself in 5 years being the age that I am, and I would always say is I see where I want to be, but I can't exactly say what's going to happen between then and there. All I know is I'm going to do my best and take the action to get there, whether something comes off and it goes off to the side and then comes back, or it's going to be a straight line. You never know, but just take the action to be where you want to be and what you want to be.
It's a squiggly line, the route to success, isn't it? You know, what you're saying, I often think myself that quite a lot of the time it's like looking through frosted glass, where you can kind of see where you're aiming for, but you don't really know. But you just keep on rubbing at this glass, and every now and again it becomes a bit clearer. And then you think, oh yeah, I know what to do, so you do it. And then a little bit later it frosts up again, but you work even harder. And then it frosts up, so you rub even more, and then you can see a little bit more. And it's just like that. It's kind of, your future is kind of there, but you can't quite see it until you actually make that step and you achieve what you're aiming for. And you go, okay, yes, I've done it. Oh no, the frosted glass is there again, and away you go, and you start rubbing and trying to see what to do, because no one's got the answers, have they? No one's got the answers at the beginning. And whether you are Donald Trump, Richard Branson, or whatever, if you sat them down and said, you know, when you started this, did you know that you were going to succeed? They're never going to say yes.
I guess that really goes back to just the asking is being told no is better than not knowing at all. So if somebody is watching and wants to reach out to somebody, You just got to take the risk and not be afraid of being told no.
Houston, I'm going to play the theme tune now for the Sermon on the Mic, and this is the part when we send you back in time to have a one-on-one with your younger self. And with yourself, it's not going to be that much of a journey, but if you did go back, what kind of age, Houston, would you like to get hold of? I'm going to play the theme music, and when it fades out, you're up. And this is the Sermon on the Mic.
Okay.
Here we go with the best bit of the show, the Sermon on the Mic, the Sermon on the Mic.
Well, I'm just going to let everyone know, the audience, how you asked the question before, what age I'm really going to choose out of the small gap I have. And I would say I'm going to go back to 7 when I was selling different merchandise from my mom's dance studio. And I would say, Houston, you got to just start asking for what you want. You're going to do it later on, but you got to take the action and start now, because the earlier you start, the better. So start now, because if you see people doing it, why not you? Why not me? And I'm going to keep it short and simple and leave it at why not me?
Like all great statements, the simple ones are the best, and the simple ones are the most memorable. Why not me? Love that. I love that, Houston. How can our listeners connect with you, sir?
Well, if anyone wants to reach out to me or even purchase both of my books or even just one of them, they can reach out to me at HoustonGunn.com. And that's Houston spelled just like the city, Houston, and Gunn with 2 N's, Gunn. So you can just reach out to me on the website. There's a contact box, and there's all the different information, whether you want to look up if you're in the United States, because I'm about to launch a big book tour, if you want to stop by as I'm on a book signing if you're in the area, or if you want to just get more information about me, or even look up my web series on YouTube at Houston Gunn, the YouTube channel.
It's been an absolute delight having you on the show, sir. Thank you so much for spending time with us today, joining up those dots. And please come back again when you have more dots to join up, because I do believe that by joining up the dots and connecting our pasts is the very best way to build our futures. Houston Gunn, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
David doesn't want you to become a faded version of the brilliant self you were once to become. So he's put together an amazing guide for you called the 8 Pieces of Advice That Every Successful Entrepreneur Practices, including the 2 that changed his life. Head over to joinupdots.com to download this amazing guide for free, and we'll see you tomorrow on Join Up Dots.